Hello, everyone. What an amazing season it is. And we continue to be quite shocked and thrilled in some respects that information is coming out and that people are willing to speak up about SA in the Christian environment, in churches, in organizations, how we handle it, what we do about it. People are also daring to speak out about spiritual abuse and what that means. So many have been harmed and hurt. You're writing me. I appreciate it. We're going to look into a little bit of that later in the show. I've also been hearing from quite a few people saying that they were harmed because of the counseling that they received from Doug Weiss, and that they're writing us, several people now, several stories, and in fact there are, different articles and things like that that are out there because they don't feel that they were handled right. Polygraph tests were involved in all of this. And so we're going to cover a little bit of that with my upcoming guests, but we are hearing you. This is touching a nerve across the nation, and stunningly, many silent, many Christian leaders who you'd think would be weighing in or saying something by now, because this is big and it's about to hit mainstream. The Dallas, I'm not sure if it's the Dallas Herald. I don't live in Dallas, but they've come out with a story today, and apparently there's another one coming on the weekend. And it is also starting to be picked up in lots of places. And I think there's going to be some real mainstream coverage for all of this. And I think that's good. Gone are the days where we want to be covering. And to that end, I was really amazed. Someone spoke up yesterday. His name is Shane Winnings, and he is the CEO and chairman of Promise Keepers. And everyone knows about Promise Keepers. In fact, Doug Weiss has done some presentations there, and we'll weigh in on that with my guest today. But obviously, he's at top level in a Christian organization, and he has come out so courageously. I'm absolutely amazed, and you're going to enjoy hearing from him, and maybe we can garner some insight and wisdom from today's guest. Shane Winnings, he's an Afghan vet, former law enforcement, and a spirit-filled evangelist. In 2021, he completed a nationwide tour of the U.S., preaching the gospel and seeing the sick healed in 44 cities, in which they witnessed countless miracles, deliverances, and people gave their lives to Jesus. So obviously, he loves all of this. He has a wife, Jess, and he's given up everything they worked for years because of the call of God, which takes priority over our convenience, comfort, and even our dreams and desires. I love that, because it really does, So, Mr. Winnings, thank you so much for being with us. I was really just so grateful that you are willing to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm honored to be here and glad to just be another voice standing up for those who, don't have anyone else to speak out for them.
Amen. You were very intense in your delivery of your video. It felt like you were compelled. You had to speak, like something had upset you and you needed to make a stand. So what was it that brought you to putting that video out yesterday?
Yeah, it was about 2 weeks ago that I heard for the first time the audio. I don't know if it was undercover or hidden. I actually never got those details, but it was audio recorded in a conversation between Joni Lamb and Jimmy Evans, Jonathan and Susie Lamb. And that was the meeting where Susie was fired. And they were, discussing them not wanting to endorse or quasi-endorse Joni's new marriage, by reading a comment from a guest on live TV. And it's like over an hour long recording. And when I heard that, I heard the language, not just the actual words being said, but the way, the character, the spirit behind what Joni was saying and Jimmy, and how they were really bullying Jonathan and Susie. And I've heard that type of talk before. And so I actually drafted up like a 3 or 4 page document, and I was going to make a statement just from one leader of a ministry, a national ministry, to another. And I decided to sit on it. And then 2 weeks later, when more of this stuff is coming out, I decided, you know what, I need to do some research. And I watched as many videos as I could. I listened to everything. And after all of that, I realized someone has to say something. I'm not here to speculate. I'm not here to comment on some of the family infighting or the power struggles or whatever. I'm here to raise my voice and sound the alarm that there is a sexual abuse that I believe is being covered up. And that's why I was so passionate, because one, I have two children. Two, I was a cop. I've interviewed kids who have been victims. I've interviewed and seen those who commit these crimes. And three, I'm a Christian, and we should care. And when we see an injustice, we should throw our voice into the mix. And so that's what I did.
Thank you for doing that. It's so important. Many are not doing that. It's shocking to me, and God is watching. So let me start with okay, you're a leader, a CEO and chairman of a well-respected Promise Keepers. You understand running an organization from a godly perspective. When you heard Jimmy Evans speaking to Jonathan in this manner and Joni, was that like setting alarm bells off? Is this a way that you would find acceptable to speak to people, especially even
Never.
family, in your
Yeah.
organization? Yeah.
No, it's I'm never going to strong arm someone into doing something that I want. If you honestly, if you reach that point, then it might be time to part ways. If you have to force someone to do something in your organization, then they probably shouldn't be working there. Like, I would ask, why do you even want to work here if you don't want to follow protocol or whatever? But this was not even within the scope of, what they were hired to do. And I made a statement in my video. I'm never going to make my employees like endorse my personal life or read a comment that's disingenuous as if they endorse it. That is not within the scope of their duties. And so when you hear Jimmy and Joni, when Jimmy's saying, Susie said, "I'm here to serve the Lord," and Jimmy said, "No, you're here to serve her," referring to Joni. Who on earth would correct someone that says, "I'm here to serve the Lord"? Um, it's just ridiculous to me. And then for Joni to kind of double down and back that up by saying submit or leave, I immediately could discern, there is something wicked happening here. And that's why I didn't feel the need to comment on all the other stuff, because I'm hearing it straight from the horse's mouth, they say. And that kind of behavior, that kind of talking, I don't talk down to people in my organization. I never will. I don't care how big or small it is. Um, you know, it just shows a lack of care, and leaders are supposed to be the greatest servant in the organization, and I didn't sense that at all from Joni.
And what has really come out as well is the character of Jonathan Lamb. He is an extraordinary. Getting to know him and Susie, talking to people behind the scenes. He was a gentle soul, like so gentle that people might misunderstand his meekness for weakness, and it is not. He is also, like you and your wife, given up everything in order to stand for the truth. And it comes down to two issues. The essay of the daughter being covered up, not respected, not investigated, lied. They were lied to and told that, that Pete was cleared. None of that is
Right.
true. The second issue being, his mother's marriage to Doug, that he does not feel was done on godly terms. That's his opinion. But it came down to trying to force him to leave his, his perspective at the door, his godly conscience at the door, and do as
Right.
Joni says.
Yeah, and that's what they expressed in this audio, and I'd encourage everyone to go listen to it, hear for yourself. I've gotten so many messages. Well, I have thousands of comments of people who agree, but there are, comments of people saying you haven't heard everything. You need to hear both sides. Well, I have heard both sides, because there's been countless interviews. There's recorded, audio from meetings. This is, you're hearing these people talk. You're hearing what they are like. I'll say that Jonathan and Susie, I've spoken with them personally. I've seen them on shows. I've seen them on videos. I've heard them in recordings. They sound the same every time. But when you listen to Joni, she's one way in front of the TV or an interview, and then she's cussing like a sailor and saying vulgar things and being threatening in other situations. And so it's like, even in that, who do you think I'm going to be inclined to believe more? And I do think that having spoken to Jonathan and Susie, yeah, of course, there are things that could have been done better, or there's questions that have come up of, why didn't you do this, or why did you continue to do that? I attribute a lot of that to the manipulation and the culture, the demonic influence that I believe they were under at Daystar. And when they got fired or whatever, when they left, when you come up out from under a demonic influence, it's like you have a clarity that you didn't have before. And so I look at this situation, and some people will say, well, they got fired, and so now they want to raise all these issues. No, I think a lot of it was, one, they found out they were lied to, and that was in 2023, I believe. And this is after the vacations and everything. But then two, when they left that environment, it's like this cloudiness leaves. And anyone who's been in this type of scenario, spiritual manipulation or abuse, you understand what I'm talking about. When you get out of that situation, it's just like someone in an abusive relationship, a domestic violence situation. When you get out of that relationship, you have a clarity you never had before, and you go, wow, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I went along with that for so long. And so I think that's the missing piece with a lot of people who are weighing in with their comments. And that is why my focus was really on this manipulation and this, environment that was kind of ruling Daystar, because it causes people to submit to fake godly authority, which is Joni, who says, I'm the voice of God to you. I'm sorry, that will never come out of my mouth. And if someone over me ever said that, well, they wouldn't be over me anymore, because I would leave.
100%, 100%. And I loved your comments as well on the NDAs. You had some strong opinions on Christian organizations actually having NDAs.
Yeah, the Bible says the truth will set you free, and an NDA says you're not going to talk about this.
Wow.
So, I try not to have too many opinions. There's a scripture for almost everything, I feel like. And so if we're going to operate in total transparency, we publish all of our finances, we do all that stuff. How am I going to also have an NDA? What is so, I said in my video, I've had a top secret clearance when I was in the military, and that was because of operations we were doing or routes we were taking. We didn't want the enemy to know. Now we're in ministry, and we've got people signing non-disclosure agreements. I don't understand what that's all about. I would really love to know what they want to hush people from talking about. And I know the one particular one that got Jonathan, removed from the board. Again, you can hear the audio for yourself. But
I'd like to play it actually. If I could, I think, is that the one you mean where we can hear the board member yelling at Jonathan?
This is the one, I believe it's Tom Callender.
Yeah.
And they had just voted in a new board member, and Jonathan said, we need to talk about this. It's when they had discovered the trackers on the cars.
Yes, actually, we played that yesterday. I don't know if you have that handy, but...
Do you trust him? Do you trust me? If we sign this document, would you trust us? We're going to sign it.
So, trust has been completely shattered. I have some deeply regretful news to share. Last week, I discovered a tracking device had been placed in my vehicle.
Let me speak to that.
Hold it.
Let me speak to that.
I investigated.
Hold on, Jonathan.
I investigated to see if I could determine who was responsible for this violation.
And let me speak to this.
This is my turn.
All the Daystar vehicles have tracking devices. And this was put into the Porsche after Marcus passed.
Let me finish.
There's a tracking device in my vehicle right now.
Let me finish.
So Jonathan, unbeknownst to Ryan, who deals with the cars, took it to the place.
Let me finish.
And asked for it to be swept, and thought he found something, a tracking device.
Okay.
And then came and they charged $600 and something that he charged the Daystar cars, and comes back and tells Ryan, lies to Ryan and say it was a recall, that he took it for something to be fixed on the Porsche. Then Ryan calls up to make a report of all the vehicles, and the guy said, no, there wasn't a recall. He asked us to scan the vehicle. We found the tracking device, and then Ryan
Let me finish.
And said, why did you say that? Or why did you take out the tracking device? We put that
That's
in
not,
after.
this is not true. So I investigated to see if I could determine who was responsible for the violation. I reviewed the security footage and saw that Shannon Kelly, Daystar's director of security, personally placed the tracking device in my car. So I'm going to play a video for you. You have to view it. This is a major breach of trust that is...
I have a tracking device in my car right now.
I need to say something. Word of God owns the vehicle.
Yeah, Word of God owns
they can do what they want to it.
It's not your vehicle, John.
It's not yours.
Stars.
This is Okay, so here's the video.
It's not yours. It's Daystar's. I put tracking devices in my company vehicles, in my company
This
truck.
happened after my dad got lost in the Suburban.
That's not
And
true.
we weren't able to track him, so we started putting tracking.
Well, I put one in Marsha's mother's car because I never could find out where she was, and she couldn't tell me when she was going down deeper and deeper. But these are Daystar's automobiles,
Okay.
They are.
and they can do whatever they want to with it.
November 7th. I'm going to play it first for you. I don't, you board member. So this is November 7th. Shannon comes over to my car. Opens up the trunk.
He might have been making sure that all the tracking devices still, because sometimes the batteries
That's not
go
true.
out. So,
Oh, I know. I have them.
yeah.
I've
But
used them my whole
regardless of
life.
it- Regardless of it, well, what the story is, it's a Daystar vehicle.
Sure it
It's
is.
not his private vehicle.
No.
That's not. So here he is for 25 seconds messing with the vehicle. You can see he's very clearly putting his hand into the trunk there on the right. Close enough.
Again, it's very not.
It's not an issue for me. You know, I believe what you
This
said.
is Daystar's director of security.
Hey, but that's Daystar's automobile, and he can do what he wants to with it if he's directed to do so. That's the point.
No,
But
that's-
we are here to the point.
Hey, I am not done with this. Shannon Kelly reports to me. I'm his boss. So when I saw footage of him doing this, I confronted him on it, and he told me he was kind of like, what? What are you talking about, Jonathan? Then I said I saw a video of you putting something in my car.
He checks.
He proceeded.
checks our
He
trucks every time we
proceeded.
come
He
in.
proceeded to lie to me. And he said, I thought I saw something in the back window. I was checking it out." But that's not true because this car has a cover that goes over the back glass. So he was definitely not checking something that he saw in the window.
Okay.
He was clearly putting a tracking device in the car, and this is at a time where my mother and I are trying to rebuild trust, and here he is placing a tracking device in the car.
Yeah, what did you think of that? So set it up.
You know, so, okay, when we're talking about the trackers on the cars, I'm the kind of person who's like, I try to be fair about everything. Obviously, we all have our biases, but I try to go, look, the tracker thing, okay, whatever. Company cars can put trackers on. Maybe they want to do it for insurance purposes or whatever. Fine. It's when people start lying about it, that's when I get interested. But even the trackers aside, like I'm not even focusing on that. I'm focusing on the fact that you've got a board member who's saying, I have an issue. There is a lack of trust. There's a breach of trust within this organization. And they're saying, before we can even move on, you have to sign this NDA or you're off the board. You're not going to talk about Joni's marriage anymore. It is such a power grab and a control thing to try to shut someone up so they'll stop talking. It's weak. It's like an in-person block. You know, you don't like what someone's saying on social media, you block them. An NDA coming from Joni is like, hey, I hate what you're saying about this. I don't like it, so I'm just going to block you, and you're going to sign this NDA or you're off the board. It's childlike behavior, honestly. But you know what? I told you this before we came on. The Bible says where there's pride and selfish envy, there is every evil thing. And so we should not be surprised at anything evil or twisted that comes out of this organization, because from their own mouth, again, I don't like to speculate. I'm not big on airing my opinion. They are doing the NDA for what purpose? To protect Daystar. So it's all about protecting the ministry. Keep the name out there. Keep it going. It's pride. It's selfishness. It doesn't care about other people. And so, of course, there's going to be other stuff that's evil behind the scenes.
Well, it strikes me that I'm wondering if this is much more common in Christian organizations, not yours. And I'm really amazed by that. I've never heard of NDAs, you know, in the churches that I went to and stuff like that. They weren't big enough. I don't know. But I guess there are huge organizations. I wonder if people like Rodney Howard-Brown, Joel Osteen, T.D. Jakes, Joyce Meyer, I wonder if they use NDAs in their organization.
Yeah, I have no idea. I'd be interested to know.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, again, I won't pretend to know everything, but I just could not imagine a scenario where I need a board or executive officers to not talk about a particular issue. If it's that big of a deal, make a public statement and then everyone's on the same page at least, and then just move forward. But whenever you try to silence people, it should provoke people to wonder what's actually going on and what's the motive behind it.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the issues, like, what do you think? Okay, trackers on vehicles. So you have a company car and you're the vice president. Should you know there's a tracker on your vehicle?
Yeah, I mean, if we were going to institute that at Promise Keepers, if we have company vehicles one day, then again, that's just common knowledge. I'm not going to treat people like they're children and do things, behind the scenes or secretly. Everyone's going to know. It reminds me of, um, you know, putting trackers on people's emails or surveying people's emails and not telling them about it. Like, it's dishonest. I don't care what the motive is. We're not going to spy on our employees. And again, that just shows we're talking about a ministry or an alleged ministry here. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I just the family dynamic there is messed up, and as we are learning, all kinds of things are happening. Like Rebecca and her husband won't have Pete to their home. Will never let Pete near the children. The family was in disarray. This came out in a letter that has been exposed in the Royce reports from Marcus Lamb, that there was a lot of family disharmony, a lot of, not just after the essay, but before, because they had actually warned Jonathan and Susie, we think this guy's acting weird with your child in public, let alone that that this person was given access to the child and was watching them during the times when Jonathan and Susie would be on set. So this person was the babysitter. And so all of this is alarming. And then with the conglomeration of all the evidence, as a police officer, I guess if a child won't speak, because that seems to be the problem right now, that
Right.
the child doesn't want to talk about it. There's nothing unusual about that. Children have trauma. What
Yeah.
would you say might be the next steps that a family in this kind of thing, where there's denial from the matriarch of the family, because it's going to cause a whole lot of problems if this is true,
Sure.
or false. It's all bad, but it has to be dealt with.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, knowing the law, I looked it up in Texas. The statute of limitations on these particular crimes is 20 years. And so, there is time, and they do this intentionally. And some states have no limitations at all when it comes to felonies. But in Texas, each state, usually it has state by state limitations. And so there's time. And the reason I say that is that we don't know how long it will take this little girl to overcome her trauma or have a moment of courage or even remembrance, because what can happen because of trauma, and if you've experienced any kind of trauma, you can black things out, whether you're in a bad car crash or whatever it was. It's not uncommon to forget things, or you subconsciously suppress things, and then you'll remember it later. You go, oh my gosh, I totally forgot that even happened during that period. There's also the reported by Susie that Joni had a private conversation with this little girl. Again, what was that about? I'm not here to speculate, but Susie's own admission is that when the little girl came out of that meeting with Joni privately, she would not talk after that. So, you can read between the lines on what might have happened in that room, but it is not uncommon from my police perspective, speaking to this in general. It's not uncommon for someone to threaten the victim, to not talk, or I'll kill you, or no one's going to believe you anyways, and da 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 da, whatever it is, they will have some type of retribution. And so this is hard enough for adults. We're talking about someone who was 5, 6, now 7, almost 8 years old, or 8 years old. I'm not sure her age now, but it's very difficult for a child to process, 1, the violation, 2, the betrayal of a trusted person, and 3, potentially threats. And so from this point forward, we need to pray that she would have clarity of mind, that she would have courage to identify her abuser. Practically another thing they can do, and I advise the family, you could do a photo montage. If you haven't tried that, where they just show pictures of several different people, one of them including the person they suspect it to be, this Pete, and see if the child will pick him out of a lineup. That way she's not actually in the room with him, but she can pick him out on paper. And another thing too is you
Yes.
when we do this as police, you will get a physical response a lot of times. Not always, it's not a requirement, but when someone sees their abuser, even on paper, you'll see, they'll look flushed, or it's like they get an adrenaline dump. Their heart begins to race. They're physically responding. You say their name, they're responding. And, with this little girl walking into the room and falling over or running into a corner scared, whenever she's in the same room as Pete, she's displaying all of the same attributes as people who have been abused and are confronted by their abuser. So, number one, we just need to pray that the Lord would open her mouth and she would identify her abuser. And for the people asking again for the 1,000th time, that is why his identity has not been officially revealed by anyone making these statements, because he has not been charged with the crime. And so we cannot say that for her. The victim has to be the one to come forward. And that is the halt on the police investigation. That's all they're waiting for. And so from now until then, they can just document everything they can think of, any interaction, anything. They can get that on paper. And then when the name comes out, you start to go back and connect the dots. And let me say this really quick. I know I'm going on for a long time, but
No, go ahead.
Susie, I'm sorry, Joni is not off the hook. So anyone who played a role that can be proven in delaying, hindering, deterring, or killing an investigation, they can be on the hook as well. So if, hypothetically, if this little girl comes out and says it was him, he did it, then they go back into the police report and they begin to do a criminal investigation. And it was found that they were, Joni or whoever else was covering up for this guy. Well, now you're looking at criminal charges for something that you should have reported, but you tried to hide. And we see this in ministries, actually. I believe we saw something like this similar with Hillsong, where it was alleged that, there was knowledge of a crime, but it was not reported. And so they were trying to hang up Brian for what his dad did. And the people in law enforcement take it very seriously when you suppress the truth. And so the Bible is true, man. Everything done in the darkness will be exposed and come to the light. And so that's what we're believing for.
Amen. I appreciate that. That is too excellent. I mean, I hadn't thought of it personally, and I don't know if Jonathan and Susie have, but the pictures,
Yeah.
and this is why you get people involved that can actually do a forensic investigation. But the thing is that Pete would not go back to the person. So the report is that they went to this forensic investigator who would have the credentials to deal with it.
Yes.
Everyone was interviewed, but unfortunately his wife kept speaking for him. And so they said, this is not, enough. We need to see him by himself. He refused to go back. And when Miss Denise Boggs was on my show, she said he kept asking her. And she said, I don't have the credentials to clear you. And Pete kept asking her to clear him.
Right. And if you have nothing to hide, then you would do it. And someone asked me on YouTube, they said, well, would Promise Keepers sponsor a third-party investigation into Daystar? And I said, yeah, I would totally consider it, but they would have to be willing. And a third-party investigation means it's truly a third party, like you're not going to shut it down. And so even while this was considered a third-party investigation, Joni and the family still had the ability to put their hands in it and get it stopped. A true third party, you don't have the ability to do that. And that's what people have demanded for cases of abuse across America. When we think about what happened with IHOP or what has happened in Gateway or happened in other churches, people are just saying, and I don't get why this is so hard, bring someone in who is not related to the preacher, the pastor, the leader, who's not a giver at the church. Like, bring someone in who's impartial and have them look into what's actually happening. The only
Yeah.
reason you would stop an investigation is because you have something to hide.
It makes absolute sense, and why people are this should be standard practice. And in fact, the church, I would say, has not done a very good job. Maybe being unprepared. I don't understand why we're not prepared. We've had scandal after scandal after scandal, including when I was a young girl, and one of our counselors, brother of the pastor of our church, would always have all the young guys in to have counseling. Apparently, total perv, molested
gosh.
many of the friends all around me. This didn't come out. The church never dealt with it. Any sort of little allegations that might be made, nobody wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole. It's the pastor's
Right.
brother. Oh my word, he went on for decades. He's literally in his 80s now, and I think he's in jail. And this only came up in the last few years.
Yeah.
People got hurt. More kids
It's
got hurt.
awful. Well, and when you prop up the ministry, or when you start worrying about the ministry, and this is really what I got upset about in my video. Why are people, well, 2 nights ago I did the video, or 2 days ago, last night I did a teaching on spiritual abuse and manipulation, and then I prayed for people who have gone through this. But what upsets me is, like, one of the first responses is, oh no, what's going to happen to Daystar? It's like, who cares? Who cares about Daystar if
right.
we're talking about a child? The fact that your brain doesn't go, oh my gosh, a child might be a victim. If that's not your first response, then there's something wrong with you. That's why I got so upset. And, there are people in my inbox, some of which I'm friends with, and they don't want to have anything to do with it, because they're saying, well, there's a lot that we don't know. And it's like, yeah, I agree. Like, that's fine. But what we do know is that something happened to a little girl, and what's being told is that there is a cover up. So at the minimum, when we're talking about one of the most influential and wealthy ministries, if you could call it that, in the world, we should at least be saying, hey, we should look into this. And I don't know why every pastor can't just say, hey, we should look into Daystar. But people see some of the power grabs, they see some of the emails, and I told Jonathan this. He didn't really do himself any favors by kind of trying to salvage a relationship with Daystar or still keep a job or whatever. I just said, dude, when you realized that all of this stuff had happened, you should have just cut ties. And I understand the dynamic, and I understand. I'm not going to pretend that it's not hard, when it's your family's legacy, it's been your life. But when it comes time to say, okay, this ministry is corrupt, my daughter is the victim, you have to make a clear choice there. And I told him that on the phone, and I'm not embarrassed to say that out loud. Like, that is what, if I was to point the finger at the other side and play the role of the critic for a minute, those are some of the comments that we're seeing. And I think it needs to be addressed. And that's why some people aren't jumping in, is because they're trying to advocate for two things at once. Susie very much seems like, I want to separate from this. Even in that recorded audio, she was standing on conviction. And when Joni said submit or leave, she's like, I'm not submitting, and fired. Jonathan was the one who said, well, I need to pray. I need, and later, still in the board meeting, talking about, well, let's talk about this. That is what muddied up, what people would view as their motive is, well, if Daystar was so bad, why were you still trying to stay on the board? Daystar was so bad, why were you still trying to get the job? Why were we talking about the president thing? That's why I haven't touched a lot of that stuff, because it is muddy. But I say all of that to say, anyone with leadership, especially someone who has been on that show, should say, hey, we need a third-party investigation. We need to look into this. We can't just turn a blind eye because it's too messy, because guess what? Churches are messy. Ministries are messy because people are involved, and no one is perfect. So yeah, I'm saddened that many are staying silent, and the excuse is, well, there's just a lot that I don't know. It's like, well, call for an investigation. You can at least do that, right?
100%. One of the things that they're saying that should clear Pete is 2 polygraph tests. And I think we have a couple pictures, JT. And people are making note, first of all, of it appears that the polygraph, the conductor of the polygraph, that it may have been, now I'm just going to say allegedly may have been, that this was actually his very first polygraph test administered. And then there seems to be some, it says here, polygraph company has only been in existence since July 30, 2024. And the polygraph seems to have been taken, I think, on July 19th. So before some of this even came out. There's another picture there. Yeah. So you had something to say about polygraphs and basically their validity.
Yeah, I've got two comments on that. One, they're inadmissible in court. And so even as police, the only time we really deal with polygraphs is when we're in the hiring process and you take a polygraph after you do like a 600 question personal history statement. I mean, it's like a 40-page thing where they dig into your whole life and then they do a polygraph based off of that. But we don't do polygraphs that we're trying to prove someone's guilty of something or whatever. There's a reason, and one of the reasons is it's not a lie if you believe it. So if you are so deceived or you have so just worked it into your mind that, people think there's this special way to beat a polygraph. Oh, I'm going to tap my foot or what. That's not how you beat a polygraph. The crazy people can beat a polygraph. And the reason is they actually believe the lie that they're living out. So if you are deceived, the problem with being deceived is you don't know that you're deceived.
Right.
And so if you do something under a demonic influence, or if you do something and your mind is just so warped that you are convinced, I would be interested to see the statistic of narcissists who would pass a polygraph because they are so convinced, that they're right, that they're whatever. If you believe a lie, then you will not fail a polygraph because what they're looking for, and again, I'm not a polygraph expert, I just understand the basics of how they work. So if there's some polygraph expert watching, please, correct me, affirm me, or rebuke me in the comments. But basically, they're looking for a physical response that you can't fake, you can't beat. When someone asks you a question and it causes your body to react, you can't fake that. But if you actually believe it up here, then there's not going to be a reaction. Like if I ask you, what's your name? You're not going to have some insane reaction. But if I were to ask you some very revealing question that your family member told me right now, you would be uncomfortable. There'd be things happening on the inside that you can't fake. But if your mind believes that that's not true, then you're not going to have that reaction. And so all of that to say, there's many reasons why they're not used, and I really could care less about a polygraph.
Right. Very, very good. One of the things that has come up, and people all over the internet have smelled a rat in this, is that, so Doug Weiss, either he's owned a polygraph company or he definitely knows all about them, because for years he's been saying that that he takes a polygraph routinely and regularly in his sex addiction therapist company. And somebody pointed out he's not a sex therapist, he's a sex addiction counselor, which is two very, very different things. And so he would take a regular polygraph. Do you have that page there, JT? So this is on the heart-to-heart counseling, his personal site. And lastly, I have a radical idea. My clinical team and I voluntarily offer a guarantee that there is no secret sexual sin in our house so that we can help any ministry. We agree to voluntarily take a polygraph to verify no porn or sex outside of marriage. This way, when you send a client for a sex addiction problem, intimacy, anorexia, or a marriage intensive, you can be the counselor. You can be sure the counselor is sexually clean himself. A couple things I would like to ask you. I don't think a polygraph is really able to determine, especially if you can beat it and you take it all the time. Do you think taking it all the time might make it easier to beat it?
That's so interesting. I've never heard anything like that. Again, when I think about um, someone who is in an addiction, I think about that whole 12-step process. I've got my issues with it if it's not Christ-based, but I think the first step, if I remember right, is like acknowledging that you have a problem. And so a lot of people who are in an addiction, they have convinced themselves that they do not have a problem. I've got it under control, whatever. And so if I were to take a polygraph and someone were to say, do you have this issue? Well, the longer that it's been going on, it's become part of my lifestyle. I'm not going to admit that I have an issue because I actually don't think I have an issue. I think I have it under control. So if you were to ask a person, hey, are you addicted to alcohol? And they think, no, I'm not an addict. They're going to answer one way and it's not going to pop up on a lie detector test. So it's you've conditioned yourself to accept your reality as not being a problem. That is where I think there's a major issue. And I if I were to play the critic again, cool, sounds great. We want to make sure our guys aren't doing this or that. I think it's a little extreme to take a lie detector test. I mean, again, police officers, we do it when we first get hired, and that vetting process is very intense. It's just kind of a little bit bizarre to me.
Right, and forcing everyone to have to do it. But the thing is, it's not. So I want to share on screen. So Rachel Lamb Brown, she's taken to defending Pete quite strongly, and she just posted this on December 11th. To set the record straight, I'm sharing screenshots of Pete's polygraph results. The first screenshot contains the name of the polygrapher, Ralph Standifer, who has absolutely no connection to Doug Weiss, despite the false claims by Jonathan Lamb and Julie Royce. And so she goes on to share some of this. Is this one? I'm going to just show you just a couple. People are weighing in on this. Sometimes you get, the polygraph examination was conducted by Ralph on July 19th, 2024. So when somebody looked up the actual company, so the company starts later. I think I talked to you about that. So that's, an odd thing. Okay. So, so he's a highly respected licensed polygraph examiner in Texas with over 2 decades of experience. He graduated as salutatorian of his class at the Texas DPS Polygraph School. He's a member, obviously he's got some credit. In his most recent role, he served as the Internal Affairs Unit Commander of the department's polygraph examiner from 2015 to 2024. Now, when the actual issue occurred in 2021, I think the issue occurred 4 months before Marcus' deaths, approximately July of 2021, and your polygraph test occurs July 19th of 2024, 3 years later. I wonder if that's also a little bit of, it just goes into the credibility of a test like that.
Yeah, I could. Again, I mean, when I took a polygraph for the police, they're asking things over 10 years back. So, if I were to play devil's advocate there, I would say it really doesn't matter, because if you're hiding something, it more than likely would be revealed on a polygraph, unless you have some sort of disorder. If you've got some sort of personality disorder, some split personality, some bipolar, something like that, where you're doing something under one personality and then the other personality is taking the exam, taking the polygraph. Again, it's not going to show up. And I do have personal experience with that, where someone who was had a mental disorder, flat out said something, took a polygraph within a few weeks, and they were asked, "Did you say this thing?" And they said, "Nope, never said it." Passed the polygraph. And it's like they said this with witnesses, but they passed the polygraph saying they didn't. And so when you have a disorder of some kind, again, it's the polygraph, it's really looking at the mind, because the mind is what sends signals to the body. And so if your mind is warped, then the signals are not going to come. And that's why, you have people asking, how could they do something so cold, like, molest a child or whatever? Their mind is not right. There's something wrong in their mind. So that's why I don't put a lot of credibility. I really don't even care when it comes to the whole polygraph issue. I don't think it adds anything to the case.
Right. So this is where some people online, a woman by the name of Roxy Crowley, she's had a lot to say. She seems to be sort of investigating on her own a lot of different things, and she's following with a very, piercing fine-tooth comb. But anyway, she's the one who's saying, when did Pete take the test? It appears this particular polygraph company has only been in existence since July 30th. The next one is when they were remarking, when this young lady, Rachel, is remarking on things that have happened, or what Julie Royce said. She's saying Julie Royce only stated that Doug Weiss owned a polygraph company, and ironically, the company is called Honest to Pete. So currently licensed under Lisa Weiss, Doug's ex-wife. So people are putting all kinds of things. It's amazing what happens when all of this goes on. But this seems to have, this seems to have legs of its own. It's a storm of its own. And you've been very kind to share your thoughts on everything. I'll just see if you could think about sort of if there's anything more you would like to say. But I found it really incredible that you're a leader, actually not even linked to this, but you're willing to say, Church of God, we've got a problem and we need to address this.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thanks for having me onto your platform, your channel. Again, my message was pretty clear, and I want to say a piece of it again. I am not here to speculate. I'm not here to offer my opinion. You can listen to the recordings yourself. You can watch the videos yourself. You can hear interviews from both sides. Both sides have shared their piece. When you listen to the audio recordings, that's when you really hear what these people are like. And that was the main basis of my argument and my report that I put out was, this is not godly behavior. There's something at work here. There is control happening. There's manipulation happening, and it has spiritual ties to it. When you say, I'm the voice of God, you're not hearing God. You're hearing the devil. You need to listen to me. You need to submit to me. If that's what's happening in just one meeting, this is what's been happening over the course of years. And so that is when I began to kind of pull that thread, everything else unraveled. And so that is why my video was based on the character of Joni Lamb and the culture at Daystar. That is really what compelled me the most to begin to look into everything else. Because if the person at the top who sets the culture is operating under spiritual abuse and manipulation, then it's not a far reach for me to say, hey, these other facts and circumstances regarding the sexual abuse allegations and these alleged cover-ups, it's not a big leap for me, because I'm not looking at someone who has the utmost integrity and they're squeaky clean and they're soft-spoken and everything. Again, this is a person who is using foul language, who's vulgar, who's demeaning to her own son, who is strong-arming people into supporting her marriage against their own convictions. These are the things that when you add it up, and in the police, we call it the totality of the circumstances. When you look at everything, at the minimum, you should arrive to the conclusion something's not right, and we need to do an investigation. Because at the end of the day, the person who is suffering the most is this 5-year-old girl. I could give a crap about Daystar. I could care less if Jonathan and Susie ever get a job there again, or if Joni. I do not care about the adults and their affairs. God is going to take care of it. But as parents, our responsibility is the children. And so I care about this little girl, and I believe we need an investigation to be done.
Because you mentioned the vulgar language, I have one final question. It was curious to me. I have not even been able to play Joni Lamb's language on the show because we block that out, when we do a show. Like, we block it out. But would a woman in your organization ever speak in front of you using these vulgar words?
100% no. And we would be having a very quick discussion following that. And if it happened again, they would be fired.
All right. I really like you. That's wonderful. You're a wonderful man. Thank you very much for speaking out. I hope that you do follow up because of your interest in the case. Just, online, a lot of people asking a lot about sort of they ask about the death of Marcus Lamb. That comes up all the time. Would you just keep an eye on things that are sort of facts surrounding the death of Marcus Lamb? And if the Lord God should lead you, because of your experience and all that is in there, to sort of bring some light or shed some interesting things to consider, then just let us know, and may God be with you. Thank you for speaking up. Thank you for being one of the most courageous men we've seen in North America. We are giving you the Hero of the Day award, and we appreciate you so much.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. And the last comment I'll make is, guys, you have the ability to go online and do the same research I did. I just took the time to do it, and I put it all together. I wrote it down. It's not that hard. I'm not that smart. You don't need to rely on people to spoon feed you information and crack open the case. It's all out there. It's public information. So go look it up yourself. And that is how we can all stay informed. And so instead of us trying to get all of you to care, you could just take it upon yourself to look it up, and then you can shout it from the mountaintops with some conviction. Because I don't want you to have conviction because Shane said it or Laura-Lynn said it. I want you to have conviction because you say, I looked this up, I heard it for myself, and something needs to be done about this.
100% true. And you know who should be investigating thoroughly is the board members in Canada on the Daystar team and the board members in the United States who do not seem to know the facts of the story. So thank you for your words. God bless.
Yes, thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Lord Jesus, we thank you so much. Thank you so much for what you're doing in this event. Thank you for Promise Keepers and how they're healing the land of Canada. If you don't tithe, according to Malachi chapter 4, what your money is blessed or cursed? Cursed. That God is against you, he will deal with you, and you will constantly be struggling with money issues, okay? Now, you can be dumb as a doornail, but if you're tithing, according to the Word of God, is your money blessed or cursed? Blessed, okay? So if you're under the authority of God, your money is blessed. If you're out from under the authority of God, your money is cursed. Does that make simple sense? Okay, so in the same way sexually, you can have a cursed penis, or you can have a blessed penis. I'm in for blessed penis, amen? If you're going to have a penis, you might as well have a blessed one, amen? All right, so I want to tell you how to walk under sexual authority, okay? Here it is. Let's go back to, let's go to the book of Romans for a moment. I'm going to give you the 3 owners of your penises, 3 owners of your penis. So if you're writing, that's what it would be. 3 owners, okay? Sorry, my Bible wants to go the wrong direction. Okay, Romans, there we go. Therefore, I urge you, brothers, in the view of God's mercy, to offer your penises as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Now, I know I took a little liberty with the words bodies. How many of your penis is connected to your body? Okay, good. If you have problems with that, see a doctor. Okay, so, but the first owner of your penis is God. Yes or no? Am I reading this right? Let me give you 2 questions that can be helpful tools in helping with dealing with this issue, with the guys that you care about, people that in your church. And you probably won't have to write these down because you'll probably remember these, okay? So I'm going to say that, and you're going to say it after me, okay? When was the last time you masturbated? Everyone say that. When was the last time you masturbated? Okay. Now, when was the last time you viewed pornography? When was the last time you viewed pornography? Okay, come here a second. Just come here. You don't have to answer me, but come up here. Can you make it? All right, good. What's your name? Dan. Now, suppose Dan went to your church. Or face them, because they like to look at you, okay? Suppose Dan went to your church and you liked Dan, okay? So what you would do in the foyer, however you describe that, okay? You meet him in there and you say, hey, Dan, how's it going? Okay, now, when you have his hand, make sure that you have it this way, okay? He can't go anywhere, okay? So then, now don't answer me, but I would look Dan right now and say, hey, so when was the last time you masturbated? When was the last time you looked at porn? And see, he would give me an answer, but see, usually they'll look down or the hand will go really limp, limpy like that, and you say, okay, I'm going to walk with you. Let's destroy this together. Okay, give Dan a hand. Okay, thank you, Dan. Now, want to do an exercise with you. It's a very helpful thing. Let's get together in groups of 4 or 5. Now, 2 conditions. If you're a pastor, then just come down over here in that corner over there. You guys can huddle up. If you're here with your son, your uncle, or your relative, or your boss, be in different groups, okay? But stand up now. Don't leave now, because I really think you're sick, okay? So huddle up. Go ahead. Move. Stand up. You guys move, okay? Get in groups of 4 or 5. I can see you pretty clearly. You can use the floor if you want to. All right. Now, if you see a guy by himself, just 3 or 4 of you go over and walk towards him. All right. So here's what we're going to do. Is there anybody who does not have a group? Okay, good. We're all huddled up. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Remember those 2 questions? When was the last time you masturbated? When was the last time you viewed pornography? I want you to practice asking the guys and answer honestly. You're in church. If it was yesterday, then be honest. It was 3 days ago, 3 years ago, whatever. Okay. Then now wait. Okay, you're gonna ask each other those questions. Okay, and then I want you to pray for one another. So ask the questions, make sure everyone answers them, and then pray for one another. Okay, go ahead and do your minutes. Go ahead and do it.
Some of the interesting things that is and are going on here is that we're beginning to get a lot of emails. So we've had several previous Daystar employees that have contacted us. First of all, noting that it was just a nightmare to work there. And one in particular stating that it was a nightmare to work with one of the daughters, Rachel Lamb. And so this is all interesting. They're also going to be submitting anonymous letters that they will sign, but they are willing to state that it was not a pleasant working environment, that everything that was seen on camera with all the friendliness, that is not how the Lamb family had been conducting themselves behind the scenes. In actual fact, if you'll recall the letter that Marcus Lamb wrote, and it is in Julie Royce's, I believe it's her first drop on this, and I hope that you will all go to the Julie Royce report and read what she has detailed in this whole, this whole story. There's lots of documentation. There's proof that, a lot of upheaval was happening. What there is no proof of is Jonathan Lamb being a rebellious young man. None. He might not be getting along with the family right now because they've had to step back because there's been absolutely no legal investigation by the family. And in fact, there was hindrance. I thought it was interesting what our guest today said. As a former police officer in Texas, if you know of a child being harmed, you need to report that. This was not done. This was not done. And there was so much control. You'll remember how the story went down. Marcus and Joni gathered everyone into their bedroom, of all places, to have a private discussion and prayer time. And during this prayer time, Rebecca and Jonathan, who had been told that they're not allowed to come into the bedroom, they rush in. Rebecca is literally praying. I believe the Spirit of the living God is on Rebecca Weiss. I believe the Spirit of the living God is speaking to Rebecca about what she knows, because here's the deal. You were honorable. You knew there was a problem. You had already reported it to Jonathan and Susie. As this house of cards comes down, Rebecca, do you want to be on the right side of history? I ask you. It's so important. You have your whole life ahead of you. To have been the one who stood for what is right, you and your husband. He's a godly man. I watched your beautiful wedding, and I saw it online. There's lots of wonderful pictures of this stunning, beautiful day, your father giving you away. And there's a legacy here. And it's not all perfect. And it's not perfect in any family. But Rebecca Weiss, I am really struck by what happened when this incident at the beach took place. What you did, you ran in speaking in your spiritual language out of a driven moment of truth being revealed. And you were compelled and you were praying something like, let there be justice, let there be justice. You were speaking it. You wanted justice. You later spoke to your father with Susie, I believe, but you spoke to him and said, why aren't you doing the right thing? Why are you just covering this? You were in shock about it. You cried at the beach the next day, maybe the same day with Susie, because the exposure was blatant. Everyone can see it, Rebecca. The whole world is writing about it. I think you're a woman of God, as your brother Jonathan. I wonder if you'd be willing to talk to your husband and understand. If you try to save yourself in the middle of all of this, you will go down with this ship. This is the Titanic. Do you know what people are still doing on the Titanic? They're playing their violin, playing the music as the Titanic's going down. People are onto this. And the reason that they're onto it is because it's the truth, and people are not willing to cover up for big ministries anymore. Are you? I ask you. You have a piece to this puzzle. You have truth. You're a woman of God. Everybody's pulling away. When big organizations have gone down, big spiritual organizations, there have been many, Jim and Tammy, the other Jimmy, all kinds of them. What about the exposure coming out right now? God is cleaning house. If I had any knowledge of anything and I was in a position where I needed to speak, and somewhat I've done my part right now. I'm doing my part right now. This is not my idea of what I was going to be doing in December. I was hoping to just be doing Christmas shopping and have my show on Daystar and, be doing what I've always done, bringing great Christian, information out. I thought my life would be totally different, but it's taken a bit of a turn because God has called me to the front line because there is a war. There is a war on spiritual abuse and lies, deception in high places. And you see it. Rebecca, you're a woman of God. Call me anytime. We'll stand with you. We'll walk with you. And not only that, as Mordecai would say, don't think that you will survive as the evil agenda has been exposed and there is damage that is going to be done in the name of the Lord to the evil. Don't think that you will not also be exposed and that you will lose your position. Everything that we ever compromise to keep, we eventually lose. Don't think that you're going to survive when the light of truth is shining and you're watching family members not getting it. God is dealing with his house. Perhaps you're the key. Perhaps for such a time as this, Rebecca. May God help you. And we're here for you. I want you to know that. 100%. I want to show a little clip of Doug Weiss. So the other thing that's happening is people that have worked at Daystar and have said it was very difficult, and they're going to be reporting. Some may even be willing to speak, but we're checking into their NDAs. We don't want to get anyone in trouble, but whistleblowers, anonymous people. We had the incredible Johnny Enlow with his wife Elizabeth on yesterday, and he says it is time for the whistleblowers to arise and to be heard. In times past, If you're a whistleblower, you're probably just going to kiss goodbye your reputation and your position, and they're going to take away your job and all of this because you're a whistleblower, you have no voice. The big church had the pulpit and the money. It's not true now. You got me. You got Pastor Ray from the Unction. You've got Ohio for Freedom with Everett Gagnon. You've got lots of people that are willing to tell the truth and to stand with you and to be excited about your truth and to support your courage. You're not alone at all. So the other side of the coin is a lot of people are now writing me, and what they're saying is they've had horrible experience with Doug Weiss and his counseling, very expensive $5,500 counseling that was paid, back in the day. You go in and Doug, now this has come out in other reports, but when Doug Weiss did counseling with Joni and Marcus, when Marcus admitted his affair, or he had to, however that all came out, Doug Weiss was the one that grilled Marcus Lamb apparently to get out, and apparently it was quite a grilling, to get out every detail, what had happened, how it happened, and all of that, and there's just so much trauma in it. But the other thing that happened was his counseling with Joni Lamb for her previous marriage and the difficulties. Okay, well, he has this company, Heart to Heart, and what they do is they bring in sex addicts who are married to spouses who want to try to see if this can be, alleviated. And so numerous stories have been written about, and numerous now being reported to us, basically saying it was a living, breathing nightmare. There was not adequate support for the woman as she was finding out that her husband slept with a neighbor, slept with people in the church. All of this information came out because they're sex addicts. So the wife, it was just reeling, but the concentration was on the man, and it was just not done well. And the trauma has stayed with them. They have nothing good to say. Not only that, so polygraphs were used that are given to the sex addicts, and they have to answer questions about if they've been honest or truthful. So one lady writes in, and this is to the validity of the polygraph, and she just says that it was just bogus because they said, oh, yep, he's passed. And here's what happens after they do this polygraph that proves that their husband is just, healed and all of that. So several months later, even more stuff is revealed to her through these further little papers she finds with all kinds of numbers and stuff for sex workers. And more information keeps coming out. And there was nothing that he was saying that was true. He wasn't healed at all. The polygraph did zero to help this couple. And so he's been doing all of this, thing. People keep saying online that he doesn't have credentials because he went through an organization, like he got an online degree that, and they're saying they're even questioning if that place is, even in operation today, that education facility. So it was online. It was never actually, it wasn't an actual university or whatever. I don't know. So the other thing that they're saying is that when Doug Weiss was separated, divorced from his wife, people have come forward saying, why would we have gone to you if we knew you were divorced? You took our money, you counseled us, and we had no idea. So the issue of the marriage of Joni Lamb and Doug Weiss is very interesting. Here's a little clip of Jonathan and Doug Weiss several years ago. Take a look.
I've heard that, I guess, the butterfly feelings kind of last, I guess, for the first 18 months of maybe a new relationship. Is it because those fade away?
Mine don't. I got 30 years and I'm still butterflied as soon as she walks. Seriously.
That's good.
But I think it's just like people get out of shape and they look differently. Right? Mm-hmm. They start putting on weight. They're not exercising, not eating. So the reason you look different between 20 and 50 is because you have different disciplines.
Yep.
A lover never loses the discipline of loving.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that awesome that he had butterflies for Lisa after all those years? But it wasn't very long until he left and said she was an abuser and an abandoner, as we heard in his outbreak that we've played a couple times. So go back to my last broadcast if you want to hear Doug's outburst being questioned by Jonathan about shouldn't he save this marriage, especially since he has those butterflies still. I want to play a little bit of this episode on Joni's Table Talk from a few years ago, and Doug Weiss was the guest. Let's begin.
So tell us, what is lust?
In the Bible,
Yes.
okay, yeah, the serpent, showed the woman, but then she lusted after it. Lust is always an internal event. Okay, it's humans who lust.
It's a choice.
Okay, it's a choice. We'll get to that later, maybe. But the devil's never blamed for lust. One time. Women are never blamed for lust. One time. Men are cautioned, don't lust after her beauty, but the beauty's never why a man lusts. Lust is always the responsibility of a man or a woman, because women lust too. Okay, women lust towards the men, but they also, like, the way they deal with each other is a form of lust, where, hey, you got a better nose, you got nicer hair, you got that. Listen, please.
Well, didn't Eve lust after
She did.
the information that
She did.
the serpent was telling her she was missing out on, and that God
Well,
wasn't
it was a
letting...
lie.
Yeah.
She was flat out lied to, but she knew,
Right.
but she should have known it was a lie because she was told the truth by God.
Yeah.
So she had to go, oh, I want something. Lust is basically when you disagree with what God says about anything. Okay, when the 10th commandment says, thou shalt not lust or covet or evilly desire, depending on your translation, what? A man's house, a man's maidservants, manservants, husband, wife, donkeys, it goes through the whole list. Then at the end of it says, and any other thing that belongs to your neighbor. Like cell phones, TVs, diamonds,
Jewelry, furs.
hair, whatever.
So it really was an inward...
But lust is an issue of the heart.
Yeah. It's an issue of the heart.
It's an issue of the heart. And so this is what I want to talk about. I did lusted after because so many women, when they get lusted after, now here we got pretty much we got a blonde, a redhead, a brunette, okay? And so it doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what your body type is. It doesn't matter what your skin looks like. There's no factor that you bring to the table that causes lust. But women will feel ashamed. They will feel slimed. They will feel disgusted. Sometimes they feel aroused and like, hey, somebody likes me. But that usually is like the first microsecond. And then the second one is, why are you looking at me? What's wrong with me? Did I do something? Did I smile at you? Did I?
Yeah, exactly.
How am I responsible for your behavior, sir?
There you go.
Okay? I just want to know. Okay, and so we created this whole lusted after because women don't have the tools to understand what's even happening at the moment. And at the moment, it's not about what's happening with them. It's what's happening with the person who's deciding to lust.
Okay, but I'm going to have to just argue with you a little bit.
I'm not afraid of it.
Because I do think that women do have a responsibility. I mean, the way we dress, like, if I'm going to, walk out in a scantily clad outfit, like, I can't expect somebody not to lust after me because I'm putting it all out there on display,
Well,
right?
okay, but we're not arguing, we're agreeing.
Okay.
I agree women have a responsibility to dress modestly, but you could be dressed in a burqa and a guy could lust after you. It's not the solution, but all Christian women should dress appropriately, and some don't. And there are women who are sexually abused, borderline personality disorders, are broken sexually, and the only thing they think they can sell is their body, so they put it on display to get sexual energy because they intuitively understand men are attracted to the holiness of their body. See, women's bodies are holy. And when you expose more of the holiness, it draws a certain kind of attention.
Well, I know that you have another series. It's called Princes Talk Longer.
Princes Take Longer Than Frogs.
Take Longer Than Frogs.
And that's for your teenage daughters or your 20-something daughters, so that they can separate what a man is versus a frog.
My 20-something over here, she had a couple frogs, but she got a prince.
Every girl usually kisses a frog before she finds a prince.
What would you say to the girls that are staying with those frogs? What are they missing out on?
They're missing out on God's best for their life. And I think a lot of times, we settle for what's good and we don't wait for what's best. And I can tell you the difference is it's just something that you could never even imagine or dream, because it's like girls get stuck here and they think, oh, this is as good as it's ever going to get. But they just don't even know.
Good instead of going for great.
Yeah.
It's fun.
So what are a couple of the most miraculous testimonies of couples that their marriages have been saved or restored that you've seen lately?
Seen lately? Well, I see, all different sides. They're not having sex and they start having sex, or the couple where he was really, he had an affair, but he decided to heal
that and move through that. I see that a lot. I see where guys have decided to come honest with their wives about the porn and stuff like that, and they get freed and well, and they're whole, and now they're leading groups. You know, so I see these kind of miracles are normal. In my world, these are the kind of miracles Jesus does every day.
So there's hope. That's
There's
right.
always hope. It doesn't matter where the broken is, because there's a cross that already paid for the broken. Do you know what I'm saying? But sometimes there's an intelligence that needs to be applied for healing to be under the
So
sun.
what about dealing with those kind of women?
Well, the
for
seductors.
men?
Okay, there's a book called Sex, Men, and God, and there's a whole chapter on who she is. Okay, and how she talks and what she does, and it's very specific. The seductress will praise you, always positive, will touch you, just kind of, you know, that thing. She's drawing energy. She will allude to there is no accountability. My husband's off in a far off place. She'll allude to there's no accountability for what we're going to do. I'm going to do something special for you. I have incense made. Okay? And so she will, there's a known pattern of seduction, and when you know the pattern of seduction, you can spot her like that. I can spot her all the time. I get hit on. I mean, believe it or not, right? And so I can spot it like that because I know what I'm looking for. Because if someone says, oh, Dr. Weiss, you're so amazing, you're so wonderful, I go, okay, you're an idiot to begin with. We establish that, okay? Okay, right? So then I can take it from there, and then she's gonna want to touch me, and she wants to have a private conversation. No, baby, I know what you're up to.
Yeah.
And I'm no longer a prey. I'm not a predator, but I'm no longer a prey either.
Was there a time in your life where you could have been a prey?
Oh, I was.
You were?
I'm a 16, 17-year-old. I go into a bar and go home with a married woman. There was time when I was a prey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it wasn't me. I was in an environment where seductresses were all around. Like, I'm taking you home. Okay, fine with me. I didn't know I was prey.
One of the things I love that you've told before is that when because you're traveling and stuff, and you and Lisa, you keep really good communication. You pray in the morning over her. Y'all say, what is it, 3 good things or
2 praises a day, 2 feelings a day, and pray.
2, yes. But you've had that happen before when you were traveling, where a woman would hit on you, and you'll call her.
Oh yeah, I do.
And you'll tell her.
I'll tell her.
Yeah, like you always shine the light on it.
Oh yeah. I don't want her to know that. I mean, like if someone hits on me, it's like I just say, hey, I was such a place. This girl started talking to me, and I could tell she wanted me to.
And what does Lisa say when you do that?
See this goes. It happens. It's just part of life.
I believe there's more exposure coming. There's things that are in the wind that must be brought to light. God is at work to do a work of redemption, restoration, but restoration is always preceded by repentance. May we all repent quickly, find His grace, and move on from there. We pray for that, for everyone involved. My website is Laura-Lynn.tv. I thank you so much for all of you who have joined us, who love us, who are just championing this cause with us. You're celebrating that we are speaking with courage, and I hear from you, and it matters. Thank you for your emails and for texts, for the calls that are coming in. Our 1-800 number is always available for you to call, leave a message if no one answers, and may God help us all to do the right thing. Thank you for your support of this ministry. If you're able to help us, it's awesome. I'm going to read from my Bible today, which is a little bit worn. It's been a lot of places. It's probably close to 30 years old as well. I want to read today from 2 Corinthians 6. This is something that I had underlined so that I could leave it for my children to understand, for those that follow me to read. It says in verse 3, we put no stumbling block in anyone's path so that our ministry will not be discredited. Rather, as servants of God, we commend ourselves in every way, in great endurance, in troubles, in hardships, and in distresses, in beatings, imprisonments, and riots, in hard work, sleepless nights, and hunger, in purity, understanding, patience, and kindness, in the Holy Spirit, and in sincere love, in truthful speech, and in the power of God, with weapons of righteousness. Do you know that righteousness is a weapon? It's not just something God wants you to have. It's literally a weapon in your hands, because the righteous are bold as a lion. Why are they so bold? Because they have nothing to hide. Because they are willing to lay it all on the line and do what is right. They have nothing to lose, and they are willing, in fact, to lose it all. So righteousness in the right hand and in the left, through glory and dishonor, bad report and good report, genuine yet regarded as impostors, known yet regarded as unknown, dying and yet we live on, beaten and yet not killed, sorrowful yet always rejoicing, poor yet making many rich, having nothing and yet possessing everything, giving it all up for the truth. It's the only way to live. It's worth everything. God bless you. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you soon.